Do you want maybe call Bob when you get a chance? Or text? We can start the...
He did not respond to my text today.
He didn't respond. I sent him one like an hour ago.
He was home. Okay. His car was there. I should have read.
Okay, we are on the air.
Okay. I'll call this work session of the Seward City Council to order. It's 5:31 on September 23rd. And we have a work session to discuss wells and septic tanks inside the city limits. It's sort of a continuation of a previous discussion. Do you want to take roll, Mr. Clerk, on this before we get started, just for the record?
Certainly. Roll call for the work session tonight. Barnwell, we're trying to get a hold of Bob. Kreitz,
Here.
Calhoun,
Here.
Osenga,
Here.
Finch,
Here.
Wells,
Here.
and Mayor McClure.
Here.
Okay.
And
Just say here. Here.
And we have Barnwell.
Okay, so we got everyone here. I'm going to turn it over to administration to begin. Mr. Bickling, what do you have for us?
Okay. So in your packet there, I'm just gonna, I'll get to this here shortly, but from the last work session, we kind of gave you this scenario, and there was a couple of what ifs that were put out to us at that point in time, and so we wanted to just bring back some possibilities and options for you to discuss, and part of it was their discussion as to what possibilities would be available if council was able to fund something up front now. And so Kat and I put together kind of 4 different options. That these are not comprehensive, but there's things you can kind of flex off of. But just a couple of notes before I kind of get into what these options would be. Just one of the things I want to make note of is all of our costs were from 2 years ago. And so I would guess that the costs have probably gone up anywhere from like 10, 15%. Something maybe more on some items.
Minimum.
And so just as we're looking at these costs, that's just keep that in your mind that these are from 2 years ago. And so yeah, well, I think we'll just go ahead and dig into these. We do have a discussion item in the regular meeting if you would choose to direct us to do something. If you want updated quotes, more funding possibilities, or to bring back something for you, just as if we do come up with something here, we can discuss it then as well, and you guys can take action on it. So just as a review, so option 1, I tried to kind of break these up so that they all were kind of in a similar format where it has an action, kind of the effects, timeline, and some costs around that. So kind of option 1, the action would just be to wait until we get DRP money back, and then you guys can take that DRP money and fund the mechanism that you put in place a couple of years ago to fund a group of private homeowners like you do the DRP. So that's basically option 1, and right now the way we know things are going to be coming back together and coming back in, we're looking at about 2 years from now we would have roughly that half the amount to fund that. So, and that's so. And the one thing about this is that this option does not necessarily help any development areas outside of that forest acres area, unless there was a group of homeowners somewhere else that wanted to get together and do that type of thing. So, whereas if we're looking at allowing wells, those would help areas outside of the forest acres Fognac subdivision. So. Anyway, so I guess option 1 is kind of like, I don't want to call this a status quo, but it's using the mechanism that you guys have set up already, but just waiting for it to be funded as those DRP funds come back in. So, any questions on option 1 there? Yeah.
Yeah, Councilmember Wells.
Thank you, Mayor McClure. Do we have an idea on how many additional properties outside the ones that we're talking about right now that would benefit from us allowing wells?
I would say we have some definite defined areas, but like we know like one property owner that's interested has properties that he's got 8 like Old Town's lot sites. So 30 by 100s, he's got 8 of them, but he wants to develop that into like one. And so it's hard to say, like, we know areas in town, like I couldn't tell you like a definitive number. I could point out areas, and I know specific property owners have come and talked to us about that, but I can't tell you. And like, if you look at an area like across the bay over there at SMIC, kind of, there's that private property swath between like Betty Cato and SMIC area, that it could definitely affect those areas. I just don't know how many lots it would, those land, there's like 120 acres over there or something like that. So to answer your question, I can point to areas, but I can't really tell you definitively how many properties, like.
But it would be beneficial for more than just one
Yes.
group?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll get into that here on these option two. So do you have any more questions on option one, or just understanding that one? So, okay.
Looks like we're good.
So, and we have option 2A and 2B, and so basically the actions are going to be more or less the same for 2A and 2B. It's just what the actual property owner would bear themselves, or the difference there. So option 2A is basically you would create code that allows wells, and which we don't have right now. So, but we'd allow that to based on certain lot size, zoning, distance. We'd want to, obviously, if you're going to allow wells, you want to create a permit so that you make sure that those people are putting all those, abiding by the criteria that you guys would approve. And which kind of includes that, just to prevent unintended interference between wells and septic systems. So that way, if someone comes in, they don't end up blocking a person from developing their property because they developed around it. So, I think it's Chief Kreis already pointed out to me, but it's already in the building code. But I think we just want to make sure that people understand. Just make sure that sprinkler systems would have to be installed in new construction that does not have a hydrant in that area. And then also in that code, you want to basically say that if we're pointing out to that area specifically, so the Forest Acres area, if we're going to allow wells out there, as a city, we are going to continue to pursue federal funding to put in utilities like water and sewer and continue to fill things out. And so we want to have some kind of timeline that, let's say in 5 years, we did get federal funding to just complete that sewer system. They would have X many years. That could be right away. That could be 5 years. That could be 10 years. But just want to have something in that, so that way we're not trying to get funding to do that. So obviously, and out in that area, the property owners with plat restrictions, we get the plat restrictions removed. But basically, all this does is allows us to put in wells, or allow the property owners to put in wells in an organized fashion. And so both 2A and 2B are basically have that. One, kind of the option 2A and 2B is if the city did want to put in money, 2A would be to pay for the road improvements and the electric improvements. And so fairly quickly, that would probably be the quickest path to development, I would say. And then 2B is kind of the same way, except it would just that instead of the city burdening that, you would just allow the property owners in that area to put in for, to pay for, put in an improvement district to pay for the roads and electricity. So are there any questions on the 2A, 2B?
I'll start over here.
Yeah.
Councilman.
Yeah, on 2A and 2B, where it says possibly put in code to state that when water and sewer brought in, the property owner has a certain time frame, 5 to 10 years to hook to utilities. I like to see it say that the property owner has a choice to hook to it, because if the guy just put in a well and septic tank and then 5 years later we get the funding, why, he's losing money. So if we're gonna make them hook up to the city water, the city should pay for it, because he's already been hooked up. If I pay for a well that I get better water and I got a septic tank working, why do I want to hook to the city? Even though it runs it now, you guys finally run it by me, why do I want to pay more to have the city hook up when I got a perfectly good working well on septic?
And I would say that that's normally what happens, like if you take what happens in states that develop wells and septics, that develop utility systems out towards those people who run well and septic, is that once it goes by them, there's usually in code that they have to hook up after so many years. So this is just standard what usually happens, and so that's why I put that in there, and that way, you know, I mean, obviously you can go ahead, I mean, the council can do what they can do whatever they want with that, but that's kind of standard procedure, and that way we're not putting in well and septic for no one to hook into it. But at least after like 5 years or 10 years, they've been able to at least get something out of their investment there.
Follow it.
Yeah, sure.
And what about adding the well and septic rights transfer if they sell their house?
Yeah, I mean, I think well and septic, yeah, what do you mean rights transfer?
They don't have to go through the whole rigmarole all over again.
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, like when I bought my house that had a well and septic in it, it's just, it's good, I think, yeah, just,
Okay.
yep.
Councilmember Wells?
I just wanted to clarify, so we're talking about, if we go back to page 1 under option 1 where it says the cost, these are the, even for 2A and 2B, you're saying that the electric communication improvement and the roadway improvement would be the city's upfront cost for option 2A and 2B, which is 1.1 million plus 10, 12, 15% inflation?
Yeah, so you, just so I'm repeating back what I think you're telling me, so you're saying, so taking those costs from up there for 2A and 2B for the roads and the electric, whether if the city just paid for it outright, or whether they did an improvement district and the city pays for it up front, either way, right?
You're right.
Yeah, so that would be.
The city would have an upfront cost in the beginning.
Correct. Correct. Yep.
And that's our estimate right now, which is 2 years old.
Yep.
Okay, I just,
Yep.
thank you.
That's correct. I just want to make sure I was understanding your question.
I wanted to make sure I was understanding as well. Thank you,
Yes.
Jason.
Other, okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, so 2A would be the quickest timeline to be able to start development. And again, you want to look at 2A or 2B. If we're opening up the opportunity for an organized well development within city limits and we have a permit and all those things, this does affect other areas. This affects areas that are that we currently don't service for water. There's one up kind of behind Pacific Park Apartments. There's areas across the bay, like that SMIC area. We know that that's probably going to be our next area of probably pretty heavy development in the next 10 years, I would tend to think, kind of a semi-commercial and residential of some kind over there. And so that allowing wells would be as kind of a citywide effect on people and not just looking at the Fognac Acre subdivision of Forest Acres. So, and one thing I do want to note with options 2A and 2B is this does not, in the near future, address the fire hydrant issues. It does put sprinkler systems in their house, but it does not deal with the fire hydrant unless down the road we get funding and we can put that in at that time. So moving on to option 3, and basically option 3 would that if the city wanted to pay, the city could pay for the water line install, including hydrants throughout the Forest Acres area, and possibly other areas of town as well. I mean, if we're gonna be putting some water in there, you could put a little extension up there. You could, I mean, we do have other water we need to put in elsewhere, but as far as looking at the Forest Acres area, if the city would pay for that, then people would be forced to hook into water right away because it's there, and that would also allow us to put in hydrants right away. And then your hydrants would be dealt with, and then the people that are out there could apply for an improvement district again for electricity and roads. And all that development out there anyway, and actually within city limits, until you have improved roads, water, sewer, and electricity, you can't actually get a permit for building, so. Yeah, there are some different combinations, and like you could change things a little bit here and there, but those we feel like were some different options for you guys to discuss, and we're open to any other options as well.
Councilmember Fitch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I think option 2A would work the best, because if this town's gonna grow, our water system's not, and our septic system's not gonna handle the housing. So we need to have this option out there, and this looks like it'll be the fastest one to get people up and moving. Because our water system, you had 100, 150 houses, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, our sewer and water system right now couldn't handle 150 houses added to it.
150 added.
Let's just say, in the next 2 years.
We would have no problem with it. The sewer system is rated for 5,000, we're at 2,500. And we peak it in the summer still, but
So we're not even close.
Okay.
we're okay. Water and sewer, we're okay right now.
Okay.
As far as, more housing, and when you start talking 150 houses and where can they go, and it's some in SMIC or not, and some here, certainly makes a big difference on both.
Okay, yeah, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of things. Could we just go through a little bit the reason, and this is not whether I agree or disagree, just informational at this point, the reason for a code requirement for a sprinkler system in a private residence?
Do
Just,
you want to hear from
yeah,
Chief?
No.
Sure.
just so everybody can understand that.
Yep, so as it stands right now, to build a building, commercial or residential, you have to be within 500 feet of a hydrant. That's in our code. That's in the fire code that you adopted. So if there's not a hydrant within 500 feet, you can't build. So when we were approached about the large project, Mount Allison Estates, we knew that project would not be able to be built if we didn't have some kind of code provision. So I searched around and I found that the municipality of Anchorage, they came up with a code provision for some of the houses on the hillside, because some of those houses on the top of the mountain, their engines can't get to. And so they were concerned about loss of life. And so they made a provision, said if you are not within 500 feet of a hydrant, you sprinkler your home, will allow a building permit to be issued. It's still not ideal, you still have the problem. So an in-home sprinkler system for residential is different than a commercial building. Commercial building sprinkler system, like you see at Sea Life Center, for instance, that's to save the building and the occupants. The sprinkler system is designed for a single-family dwelling. It's designed just to get you out of the house in a fire. It doesn't cover garages, it doesn't cover bathrooms. It's one head in a kitchen, one head in a hallway, one head in each bedroom is pretty much all it is. They're pretty affordable. They're about, you can buy a kit. Don't quote me, but I was told around the $3,500 range is the whole kit and caboodle together, with a little standby tank, little pump, and then the sprinkler heads are tied into your PEX system and your water lines, so they're constantly getting circulated water, so they're not just standing. So it's a pretty cool system. I would definitely do one if I had a house. This still doesn't stop the house from burning. It may put the fire out, but it doesn't stop the house from burning. And so I do want to go on record and voice my concern of not being within 500 feet of a hydrant, which is a nice deployable amount of hose for us, a volunteer department, trying to come and put the house out. We don't want that house to become fully engulfed, and we showed you how fast a house can burn. So then when your house is fully engulfed, your neighbor's house is going to start fire, and then we don't want this conflagration to start. So that's why sprinkler systems are a temporary fix as far as to get someone out. But we were going to, it was in the subdivision agreement that the Mount Alice Estates people knew that the sprinkler system was just to get you out, and that we would more than likely not be able to put your house out at Mount Alice. Distance, no hydrants, no water.
Councilman?
Yeah, I'm just curious if some of these houses, for instance, there are people that leave for the winter. If you have a house that's primed with a sprinkler system, I assume you can't turn the heat off and leave.
Correct. Yeah. And I have no opinion on the wells and septics as the fire chief. I just have an opinion on hydrants. And if it's a provision that you can have a well as long as your house is within 500 feet, I'm all for it. We need hydrants every 500 feet. That's the national standard. That's what the city adopted. And I'm an added proponent for let's not go backwards, you know? Let's go forward. We've been kicking the can in the city for so many different projects. Let's not let this kind of push us back. And I understand housing shortage, I understand we need to develop these lots. I do think there's some other mechanisms that can help that. But I told this story to P&Z, when my wife and I moved here, the first thing we did, actually Chrissy was our real estate agent, she showed us a lot in Forest Acres. I went straight to Doug's office, asked him how much it was gonna cost, and I didn't buy it, because I knew how much the utilities were gonna be. So, due diligence, to me, if you're gonna take on that lot, then you're gonna take on how much it costs to get the utilities there. That's in city code. So I appreciate council taking a look at accepting these alternatives, but please don't do it at the expense of my department and my volunteers that have to load this hose, and we don't have tankers, and we don't need a tanker right now because I have nowhere to put it. So, yeah, I just ask, please consider whatever you come up with, give me my hydrants.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Question, you say 500 feet from the hydrant to the truck. How many feet of hose does a truck carry?
We have 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Any other questions for the chief? Yeah.
Well, not for the chief.
Well, a question.
Okay, I was going to ask administration, thank you, Madam Mayor. So if we're saying that option 2A is the quickest timeline, and that says that, or it's in that option, the city pays for roadway and or electric improvements, how would we look to fund this, do you think? I'm just saying, I mean.
We would, whatever you, like, if you guys say, hey, this is what we are thinking about paying for, we could bring something back to you and look at some different options for funding for this. I mean, right now it's budget season, we're doing lots of other things in that front, so whatever it was, we could come back to you with some funding options. That is just, if the city were able to fund something like that, then that would be the quickest one. The reason I say the quickest is that if we allow wells and septics, we already allow septics, sorry, but if we allow wells, and you said, okay, let's say we have the money coming out of this account, we could put out an RFP. We already have a lot of the engineering done, and electric can do that, but we could put out an RFP for roads this spring, and so you could have roads, electric put in here in the spring, summer, and then people could punch wells, hook their wells up, and so you could be permitting by probably mid-late summer. So anyway, that just to explain kind of the process that would go along with that. But yeah, we haven't looked into funding situations yet. So.
Councilmember Vaz.
Well, speaking of haven't looked into funding options, something that I don't know if it's possible, but to think about, I know that we had originally came up with the option for those property owners to have, that we would put everything in and then they would pay for it through their tax assessment, correct?
Yeah.
Is that still even if we went with option 2B, and my estimate with inflation is 1.2 million, almost 1.3 million. Could we then have the property owners pay that back through their taxes, property taxes?
Yeah, so they would just have to apply for an improvement district specifically for the roads and the electric.
That's 2B.
Yeah.
Option 2B.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's 2B, yeah, so they would, but that'd be something that would have to come from and originate from them, where they would have to, do like they did before, where they would apply, all the homeowners to sign up, same thing, except instead of for all the utilities, they would just ask for the roads and the electric, so.
Vice Mayor, did you?
No, I was just going to say that's what they did before, or that has happened already, but it was for everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and was that 2A or 2B that you were referring to? Because
That's
I thought
2B.
2A was.
2A is we cover it. 2B is that it goes back on the property. We cover it up front, but then they pay us back over time.
Yeah, they pay us back with interest over time, like if they paid on their property taxes every year.
You see, 2A is the city.
And in the original, like the well and septic work session packet from a couple of weeks ago, there are those costs. There's one on one of the back pages where they went ahead and they,
Plus this inflation.
So, and I'm looking at that right now. So for, again, this is for the costs that were estimated 2 years ago. At that time, it looks like most of the electrical costs were about $8,000 a lot. And then the roadway lots were about $36,000 a lot.
36,000?
Yeah, for the entire roadway improvements out there, because they have to basically build roads, and they're kind of like, I mean, you can drive out there right now and they look like roads. They're not roads. They're not improved. They would need to be bladed off. You'd have to have fill brought in and compacted. They have to be made the correct width. So that way they have room for like snow plowing and maintenance and all that kind of stuff. And so, but yeah, so from the estimates that we had, the roads are $36,000 and electric was $8,000. And again, those costs are gonna go up a little bit, but at least that gives you a ballpark from 2 years ago, so you understand what each lot would be paying for approximately, $45,000-ish dollars maybe.
Okay.
Plus,
I'll put it out there in a minute. You had a question, Councilman?
Yeah, you said that federal money is periodically offered to the city. Is there a way to accelerate that?
I would say it's not offered to the city. We have to go out and we pursue it. So like that federal money for kind of doing a utility expansion for residential development has been in our legislative priorities for the last 3 years. And so it's something that we take to our lobbyists and we try, and it's on the nice, it's in the nice guide every year that we give, and that they go out. And so it's a very high priority for it, because you guys said it was your priority. And so it is a high priority for us to get that.
So I guess the question would be, is that particularly, those particular lots on the priority, the high priority? I know, is that one of the ones that we were really targeting? And
yeah, that would.
Do you have a rough estimate? Is there any way you can guess what kind of timeline that would be? For instance, if we went through with this and we were like, well, 5 years without hydrants, then we'll have them. No way to guess. No,
it's federal government bureaucracy. It's like it could happen next year. It could happen in 18 years. You just don't really know. I mean, you do the best you can, and you lobby for it every year.
But is that the main area that we're thinking of punching through?
Yeah, I mean, for that utility expansion, it's not just that area, it's utility improvements in other areas as well. And so, but yeah, we have that on there.
Could we see if the public has questions and comments at this point? Are we okay with that? Anybody in the public have been? Yeah, come on.
Christine Casagrande, Inside City Limits. So I guess my first question is, you guys are working off of numbers from a past feasibility study, and on page 100 of the last work session, or I don't know if you guys are using it for this one. I think it's highlighting all the lots, but my question would be, for example, lot AY or AZ or BC, I guess it would be AZ or AY. They already have a road that everybody uses, and they already have electric. So are they going to be pulled into this assessment district and have to pay? No.
They actually weren't included. Even on the costing, they were not included for the roads. If you look on those lots,
okay,
for the cost analysis, they already had a road. So we're not going to charge anyone if they already have something. They're not going to be part of that improvement.
So it doesn't change the cost for the other people either, because you're using the same number of lots.
Yeah, at that time, because I know AY does have electric. I didn't know that AZ did, but I know that AY does, and so that will shift that a little bit, because you're taking one lot out and taking that whole big cost and subtracting one out and dividing it by that. So
okay,
it probably will produce a little bit of an increase for the rest of them.
Okay.
Yep.
That was one of my questions, and so if council were to go with option 2B, which is the option that I would encourage everyone to go with, and I mostly like it because it is still putting the responsibility of road and electric onto the property owners, which I don't feel that the city should front or have to take that cost, but maybe front the money for that cost. Would you have the fire hydrants on there, and are there measurements of like how many fire hydrants would have to be put in? like, where the fire hydrants are right now and how many you would have to get in, and is that gonna be part of building the road?
No. No, 2A does not involve any fire hydrants. I mean,
Okay.
sorry, 2A and 2B do not involve any
Right.
fire hydrants.
They're-
Okay, so that would be encouraging the development to continue without the fire hydrants, and that just moves me on to the next topic. I know the chief said he doesn't want a tanker truck because he doesn't have any place to put a tanker truck. But we're actually in a rock and a hard spot right now with Mount Alice Estates as well, because we don't have a tanker truck. So we basically have no fire protection over there, but we're still in city limits, paying property tax, following city rules. But the subdivision agreement that we have before us right now, that we haven't signed, has no fire protection. So you don't want to put these people in that same position. I mean, those lots are already sold, so they'll probably be grateful just to get what they want. But as far as somebody trying to sell lots with no fire protection, that might be a little bit different story. So maybe, like, I applaud all of you for entertaining all of these thoughts, and I again strongly encourage option 2B, but also maybe just simultaneously, if you're looking into expanding city infrastructure, I think the thing that we need most right now is a tanker truck, especially if you're also looking at 120 acres over by SMIC as well that could be developed commercially and all of that, because there won't be fire hydrants over there either, if I'm not mistaken.
Did you want to respond?
We do have fire hydrants right over there at the SMIC area. They're over by the shipyards and
There's
stuff
about
like.
45.
Yeah, there's quite a few over there, but just, it's one of those things though, if you have those, it's a square and there's a road and then there's a little bit more, but there's 120 acres, it would just be one of those things you'd have to count for. I mean, I think we have ones that are pretty close up to the edges of it, but that'd be another thing that we would have to address when we get over there, right, at some point in time, and utilities and how that's gonna work out, and if they decide to do something like down the road, the DRP program, and they just install everything in there anyway, or if they decide to do wells and septics, and some of it's gonna be like, I think it's probably gonna be a little bit of mixed use over there, I would guess, not just fully residential or fully, but probably like mixed. So, yeah, it's hard to say, but we do have fire hydrants, a lot of fire hydrants over it.
And we also have a fire engine at SMIC as well. And so it stays in the harbor building over at SMIC, so there is a fire truck over there. And if I said no fire protection, I misspoke. We're always gonna come. We're always gonna do what we can. They just need to know we're gonna be limited on resources and limited on capacity to actually put a house out effectively like we would down here. Also, it's not that I don't want or would never want a tanker, it's just that's not in the 5-year plan right now. We've got other projects that we need to get accomplished and fix apparatus that are broke. So that is definitely in the 5 to 10-year plan. Also, take this off and collecting crates inside city limits. I heard the comment earlier about hooking, if they had a well and septic and we ran water later, why would they have to hook up? I think as a taxpayer, if the city's gonna put money into infrastructure, and the people who are benefiting from that should help pay, and we should have more customers. And like Doug said, our capacity's great, we can handle it. We need more customers putting in. We already put money from the general fund into the water department every year because it needs money to help fix things and to operate. So the more customers we have, the less we're having to take that out of general fund and put it into the water department. So whatever you're thinking, please think that us taxpayers are footing the bill, we need to be paid back, and we also need to have customers. That's all I had to say.
I had a question about the tanker trucks. If we had a tanker truck and it was housed here, either where we currently have the fire station or where we're projecting, then we've got all these houses across the bay that can't get put out. If we had a tanker truck there, it's the same situation.
Correct.
So conceivably, to expand like this without adequate fire hydrants, we would need 2 tanker trucks, right?
And I'm here to
Potentially.
say I need a fire station over this week, is that what I just?
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
No,
how
you're-
do we
you're- yeah,
protect
yeah.
across the bay
Yeah.
either way?
You don't want to be more than 5 miles from a fire station for
Yeah.
our ISO, so luckily we can count SMIC right now as a fire station, but I don't think the harbor's got enough room for us to house that with all their equipment
Right,
inside.
so-
but, Yeah.
Okay. It just opens up a whole
Well, then I need
batch
people
of
to drive them.
questions. Pardon?
I need people to drive them too.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you need more
More.
volunteers, more of everything.
More of everything.
Madam Mayor, too, it just, and we are having those conversations because the minute that SMIC does start really expanding over there, we are gonna need to have like a miniature, like city facilities over there, whether we're gonna have to have more public works over there, we're gonna have to have probably a public safety setup over there where it's a combined fire and police where they have something over there as well. And so we are thinking down the road because as we're building our city for what's gonna be here in 50 years. And so we think that that's kind of we've had conversations about that, so.
Okay. Councilmember Finch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And, you know, not just the housing issue with the hydrants for a tanker truck, but everybody knows one good earthquake and our water system is broke. And we gotta have something to put fires out. So either way, we need a tanker truck to go help with this and natural catastrophes. I mean, everybody remembers the Kenai fire. What if that fire would've come up at Exit Glacier like it was trying to? We could've used the tanker truck.
I just realized I had opened it for the public too, and I only, does any other member of the public want to ask questions or speak at this point? Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll come back to you, Bob, okay? We got kind of sidetracked there.
I guess
Yeah,
Public Works Director. Also, Doug Schessler, Inside City Limits. I had a couple of things I wanted to kind of bring out. Wells and septics, you know, I think if we were able to put water and sewer lines everywhere, we should. I mean, it's just a cost, and it's high cost, whether it's the developer, which is normally what it is, or if it's the city as they do improvements. If we look at our ARPA funds we just had received a couple years back, they were originally designated to only replace and extend out where they already have wells and septic to try to eliminate wells and septics. We're allowing more penetrations into the aquifers, and the more we allow, the more we have a contamination chance. I would really like to see us put water and sewer out there somehow. And let's talk the Forest Acres one. I'd like to see us, before we just say, hey, this is what we can do, or 2A or 2B, I'd like to see us just look at a plan. I'm not sure how many of the outer ones go, but Cottonwood's the main thoroughfare through that whole subdivision. If we could just take the lines, both water and sewer, straight down Cottonwood to the end, you could branch off, you hit all but 4 properties, I believe, 4 or 5 properties, instead of what we've got now when they engineered it to go through and down every other street, going down and then out to a bottom lift station. We almost cut the water and sewer infrastructure in half, if that's a doable thing. It's something I think we should look at. It would really get the lion's share of people done, and they'd all be on water and sewer, and it'd be much, much less cost to get there. And it would take 1 lift station to get it. So for sewer, so I'd just like us to at least look at that before we just say we're gonna go with plant 3 or 1 or 2 or whatever we're looking at going, that we really look into, is there that option? I think we're well versed to get that if we can do it. I think we're always looking for federal funds. They're just not always there, but we have state loan funds we can look at. And I think if we can reduce the initial cost to a lot of people, maybe we can just get it through on the assessment district where we pay it and then charge them back on a certain way. That's what I'd like to see. We've got different outliers on different lots out there too. There's some single lots that are different areas around town and both sides of the bay. I'd like to see it be some sort of variance or conditional use on some of those to do. I think, yeah, there's spots we do have wells and septic, and some that you have to have, it's just what it is. But ideally, there's definitely some that are close enough that we should be getting right there. I looked at the Soldotna code that was included in this, and it says 300 foot. If we were gonna go to the 300 foot, it includes several of these lots, single forest acres and some others. But what do? Some of them are there, some aren't. Now, is it an assessment district? I just think it's well worth another look, just to double check on is there a way to just go straight down Cottonwood and branch? You could hit every house going down there, you could hit, those next ones coming down are pretty simple on the other ones that we could get, and it'd be a much simpler system. So I'd like to see that, and that would take care of the hydrants, it would take care of the fire protection. They'd be able to take out having to put the sprinkler system in. You wouldn't have to get your septic pumped every year and a half or whatever it is to pump them. There's some real benefits, I think, that could be realized from it. So I'd like to see us take another look, and I apologize that hadn't come out earlier. I'm just digging through this stuff today, looking through it, thinking there's got to be a way to do it right. And that's, to me, doing it right. And like I said, we add customers that help everything keep going, and it's a much safer system for the environment to do it. So that's all I got.
There was a question.
If you have questions, I guess.
Yeah.
Bob, you worked before me.
Yeah, actually, Doug, you actually answered the question. I wondered if there was a spur or a way we could at least have some access to the closest lot, so that helps a lot. That makes a lot of sense.
We could stub out every lot on the way down Cottonwood, and then there's just a couple behind lots that wouldn't take much for because you're only going 140 feet on those to pick up some if you wanted. But there's some that don't want to be part of it. It may reduce the amount of people who are in the district, because it wouldn't go way down on those bottom ones that are, they haven't really, I think the Fognac still owns some of those down there. And we eliminate some of those out of the district.
Okay,
Yeah,
Bob,
those aren't included in it.
Okay.
And this question is actually to Chief Kreitz, but going back to Bear Creek with the tanker truck, thanks, Doug. What's the response time from Bear Creek to that lower forest acres? What's your accepted response time, and what would that response time be from Bear Creek?
So they're all volunteers as well, it's just a couple paid staff, so again, it depends on the day. Just during the daytime, they're gonna get right out the door. I bet they could be in forest acres in, 8 to 10 minutes. At night, 12 to 14 would be my best guess.
Councilmember Wells, and then
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess my question is to administration on, I really like what Doug had to say there, and is it possible to request administration to put a plan like that together, a cost estimate like that together? Or is that something we have to go back out for bids?
But I think that we don't have to go back out for bids necessarily. I do think that we can get pretty good ballpark we can just go measure out, like from here to here, we know how much like hydrants are, we know how much pipe is per foot, we know like that's wrapped into like an install cost of like 250 per foot type of thing. And so we could put our heads together and come up with a map and do some measurements and say like, hey, if we ran it here, this is who would be affected, this is who wouldn't, this is your kind of your cost that you'd probably be in at. So.
I think it'd be pretty simple to red line out stuff you wouldn't, the ones we wouldn't go all the way down the hill. And then the lift station would be simpler up the hill. And you'd have water and sewer going right down Cottonwood and pick up almost everything there.
follow up, and then.
Just to follow up, thank you.
I'm trying to get there.
I would just like to suggest that, like Doug has said, is that we get those estimates before we make any decisions whatsoever, because I'm a firm believer in doing it right the first time, and if we can do it right the first time, the fact is that whatever that cost is to the property owner, it's not like they're gonna lose that money. At any point they ever go to sell the home, the fair market value is gonna recoup that cost, so.
Before we pursue that, Kevin said his.
Yes, I'd like to see Doug's option thrown in with this packet, because I thought you were involved in these options, which would have been a nice thing to see, but I agree with Councilmember Wells. I don't want to be doing this multiple times. I don't want to play Band-Aid. I want to fix it right the first time. So I would greatly appreciate seeing your option that you have Doug thrown in here.
And just, so you know, Doug was a part of, like, when we were doing all the engineering and looking at the stuff out here, Doug was a part of those, so I don't.
This was just something that
Yeah.
came up.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that, like I said, I just was brainstorming this, going through stuff today. So the other stuff, yes, I've been a part of most of all that stuff going through it. And just, as I'm looking at it, how can we make it do it right? So that's just where that came from.
Best bang for the buck, I say.
Thank you, Doug.
Any other council before? Okay, go ahead, Russi. We'll make some decisions here before.
Off of what Doug just mentioned, I just wonder if you did bring it down Cottonwood, like you were saying, then what happens to those guys at the end? So AY is still sitting there with his electric and his septic that he's put in because he was allowed to, but then is he still stuck per code without being able to drill a well if you were to go with Doug's option? And I don't know about any of the other lot owners that wouldn't be affected by just running Cottonwood. So that would be another question. And then one other thing just to look into, maybe you guys could still consider while you're weighing options, is how much, you mentioned you know how much a fire hydrant costs. So maybe just look into the cost of a fire hydrant versus the cost of a tanker. And those kind of things.
Okay. Okay, back to council, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just been trying to absorb and listen to all this. If we choose to have them put something together, what Doug said makes a lot of sense to look at that for sure. And I would support that, but also when we do that, I would like to see included what it would cost for road and electric in that same thing, because I think that, you know, in a perfect world, the city of Seward would pay for all of it. We don't have that right now, but we can pay for some of it.
You mean the taxpayers would pay for all of it?
In a perfect world, the city would put all the infrastructure in. It would recoup its money over periods of years as the tax base grew and put that money back into to the city. So I would like to see electric and road included in the cost of doing that.
Yep.
Especially as we go into this budget session, because there is some money, we'll be talking about some of it later tonight. And so I think that we need to take a look at the whole thing and see what the city can do, see what we're going to ask the home builders in a special assessment district to shoulder, and I'm not opposed to that. But I'd like to see the cost of all of it so that we can make a good decision and not, you know, say, okay, here's what it's going to cost you for, you know, an assessment to put in water and sewer. I think that's a great idea. We still got to do roads and electric. So I think we should include that.
Okay. Anyone else in the public wanting to say?
Hi, my name is Jenny Grischuk. I live inside city limits, and I am also one of the property owners in Forest Acres. I've lived in Seward since 2016, and for the first time this October, all have lived an entire year in the same dwelling. I share that because I, more than anyone, am really eager to develop out there, because I've struggled to find housing in Seward, like many people that are my age. With that being said, I am a property owner out there, and I would rather wait and do it right and wait for the full project to happen rather than for these stopgaps to happen. I really appreciate everything council is doing. I know you all did the feasibility study, and you've been really making these avenues for us to, you know, get funding from the city and things, and I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing. But I'm really eager to have permanent housing out there and to build a place out there, but I I want to make sure that we're also doing it right. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public who wants to weigh in? Okay, go ahead. We seem to have ample time tonight.
Rhonda Hubbard, 1800 Jessley Drive, inside city limits. I was looking at the options, and that was presented, or that was presented in your packet, and is that what we're talking about here tonight? So I would strongly support option 2A, and then to put into code some provisions for private septic and sewer. And I just, this is actually quite a good investment for the city to allow this, as well as make the investment to put in the roads. Be mindful that those roads are not public, or not private, they are public, so they will be used by other people. So to put all the onus on the property owners to, you're looking at an assessment district, to do that out there, I think is a little much, and plus you'll be able to claw some of that money back once the property values are increased. And at this point, if you're not going to do this investment, I would encourage all the lot owners out there to go to the borough and do like one lot owner did, and just ask for a reduction in his assessment value, because they're not worth it. One guy did it, but he had $76,000 or $78,000, and he got it down to $600. That's a 99% drop in property values, and that's money that the city is losing as well. So think about that as far as your investment, and it's not just taxpayers' money that's paying for this. This is investing in your community. You're increasing housing. You're going to get that money back through higher assessed valuations in the property, assuming people will be building. And so I just think you need to make it a little bit more accommodating for them to get their own septic and water out there, because it's going to take a while, I believe, for the city to come up with DRP funds and get that area developed out there. And then when you do, then you can ask them to hook up, and give them 5 or 10 years to hook up, so that if they did put in their own sewer and water, or their own septic and wells, they could at least get some return on their investment on that. So I guess I wouldn't look at, oh, this is taxpayers' dollars doing this. This is what we do as a community, and we develop our infrastructure, so we make it buildable, and we increase the overall value of the land, the area, and the socioeconomics of our community. So that's my 2 cents worth, and I would encourage you to look at seriously at option 2A, and if you are going to do 2B, or want to recoup some costs from the landowners out there, is to maybe consider electrical only. Again, you're going to be able to claw back some of that money once those lots improve in value, and the assessments go up as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else in the public? Okay, I'll bring it back. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One other thing too, as we talk about going down Cottonwood, and that's great, and we can reach most of those people, I would also want to make sure that we are still looking at those people that Cottonwood doesn't affect, up above Pacific Park and even out in Forest Acres, and what we can still do to accommodate them to be able to develop their properties. Because it's not just Forest Acres.
Thank you. I agree with that. If, say, we were to give direction and ultimately go through Cottonwood and develop all that, and there's still like the beyond Pacific Park, those lots and a few of the others, we would have to change code to allow them to get conditional use permit to have well and septic? Or what would be the process if we were to individuals like that were to come for just a specific area or lot or two, is that a code change? Yeah. So
Yeah, for the
either
well,
way, it's a code
because
change.
septic is currently allowed.
Right, yeah, I know.
Septic systems are currently allowed under certain conditions, and so it's not a free-for-all. So we'd have to look at the conditionality of that person's lot for the septic system. And then wells would be a code change or create a code change and then creating a pathway, whether it was like a conditional use permit or something to that effect. You'd have to create some kind of legislative pathway.
So we kind of have two different, just within this side of the bay, we have two different situations then, but with some careful planning, we could accommodate both options this way. It's a thought. That doesn't take care of across the bay yet, perhaps, because there's, okay. Any further comments? Yeah.
I just kind of echo both of those comments. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we should look at that code and see if we can ease it up a little to accommodate some of these people that are stuck. Makes sense. I know that in some of those cases, they're pretty darn close to fire hydrants or within pretty dang close to that 500 limit. There's things like that we can accommodate or look at to on that note. And as for pollution of the water table, most of what we're looking at are below any of the water sources that we're using for city water, right?
No, our water source area actually comes all the way from Resurrection River, comes down, and I was looking at the 2009 water source protection area, and before the levee ever went in on Jap Creek, it all flows right through there. It still comes underneath the levee at Jap Creek, the groundwater, as it comes through. It's a pretty big area, and what you want to do, I think, something as we're looking at development, we do need to look at future, is there a place to put a well as we go further north? Is there a new a spot for another municipal well when we do need one? I think we have to be looking at those, and typically you have a 200-foot radius around. You have a pretty big chunk around those that you're supposed to try to keep clear from other well septics, any of that stuff. So I think that it's something really to look forward to in the future, going through those things. I really strongly would like us to even keep looking at any ways we can to, rather than just allow a well or a septic or wherever they are, instead look for ways that we can help get the water sewer to them. I think that's our first look trying to, and I know there's been a lot that have tried going through there. It is a big cost. There's people, when you buy something further away from those services, typically you get it for a better price, but you're further away from those services when you buy it. And so how do we make those work and still be able to get them to be able to build and live there? I do agree that by getting them in one way or the other, you're at least bringing them in, you're getting some housing in, you're getting them on the regular tax rolls. Doesn't always help on the water sewer side of it, but I think for the most part, as long as we're really pushing to try to get, especially the close ones, if you're 200 feet, within 200 feet right now, it's not easy for just a single landowner. And I think we really have to, just like we just did with developers, the Hilltop, if they were away from all of it, they had to put in all that stuff. Water, sewer, electric, the whole thing is in there. There's some of these plats that this particular plat had a plat note that said all lots must be connected to city sewer prior to development. Plat note 4 on that one. As I look just up beside the water tower, just a ways from it, I think Tom Lindquist owns those lots. There's 4 or 5 of them there. That particular one said right on the plat, another plat note says that both you have to be hooked up to water and sewer. It says they're already served by water, but the owners or developers of these lots will hook up to city sewer. For whatever reason at these dates, and this was 2008 was the one up at North Forest Acres up there. I don't recall, I think it was 96 or something on the one up there by the water tower. These are things that have been in there for a while. There's some of it, that area, like I said, it used to flood a lot up there, and I don't know if that brought in part of it, but they certainly were pushing to try not to have wells and septic wherever they could, and they were putting on these plat notes. It's another challenge everybody has, trying to go through the borough and the state and the city to get these plat notes removed in order to put wells and septics. There's several of them that have it, so it's really a thing as you buy something, really, you gotta read those plat notes. They say, but then that brings me back to, I just wanna somehow keep working to push our way into getting water and sewer municipal to wherever we can.
Okay, back to Councilman. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, just delayed intelligence maybe. The other thing I don't want us to forget, though, in all this conversation is the possibility of making a well available until we can get water there, because we may have 7 people sitting out there right now going, man, if I could put a well, I would build a house next week. I know that's not the case probably, but I don't want us to necessarily shut it off for 2 years before we can get the water and hydrants there. And so I would still like us to remember that conversation when we're doing all of this, to maybe there can be a provision to allow the well until the city water is there, and then it's going to be on the property owner if they decide to go ahead and put the well in and spend the money on it, knowing that they're going to have to connect to city water when it becomes available. But I don't want to forget that possibility, because there may be some people that want to develop their property and build a house quicker than we can put water and sewer.
Councilmember Wells.
Yeah. First, Councilmember Calhoun, I apologize for speaking over you earlier. That was rude of me. Secondly, I thank you for bringing that up. So I'd like to ask administration, ask Doug if, as Councilmember Calhoun was saying, if the council agreed one way or another to put in full utilities, what would that timeline, from the date of approval, what would that timeline look like?
On Cottonwood, you're talking.
On Cottonwood, yes.
Sure, as long as, you want me up here or
We could hear you better on the, YouTube and everything, if you're up there.
I think the timeline is we're looking at, if we were to say we've got it, let's go ahead. The engineering is pushed, it's up there a ways. I mean, it's not taking, we're just eliminating things right now. If we were to do, like I said, on the particular one, the Cottonwood one. If the city has the money to do it, when we say this is an engineer's estimate, it's gonna cost this amount, and we say go, it takes about a month to advertise, a couple weeks to award, and off you go. I mean, it's like any, I mean, if we're ready to go, it goes.
So like spring.
Yeah.
And
Summer.
what did it take? It took like less than a week for them to run utilities down Cottonwood, down Maple, in front of Harmon's area. What did it?
The actual construction doesn't take long. It's more, through council takes a long, that's a process for all of us to get through, and then once you get it through, we have to advertise that. If the city's put it in, it's gonna be a project that we advertise through the state, so we get whoever is the low bidder or the best bid on it when we do an RFP, and part of that, we put in construction this summer, by August 30th or whatever we put in for a date. And once in a while we get pushback to say we can't get it all the way done till September, or hey, we can have it done by June. I mean, it's part of what the contractors, as they come in, you put it in your bid what you're looking at, and then they have a schedule. They're bidding for stuff all spring, trying to get something going.
Thank you.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if we decide to do this, do we do this before we have an agreement from the majority of the property owners out there that they will buy into a special assessment like that?
I think you have to have the special assessment pretty much done.
Yeah.
I think it's just reworking the numbers and saying, hey, folks, this is what we can do it.
Right.
And have it all completely done, and you have fire insurance, you have no issues with fire, you have water and sewer that you don't have to mess with. So I think at least if it gets it down to a reasonable price, which I think it will, but we need to look at it, I think.
But we should have that first.
Well, I think like any assessment district, you get the estimate out and you put it out to the group.
Right.
And you say, here's what we estimate, here's an engineer's estimate that we think it is, this is how it divides out, what do you think? And if 51% vote for it, you go through. Is usually how an
That will
assessment
just
district
add a
works.
little time.
Yeah, would, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, sounds like we know what we might direct later in the meeting. Any other, oh, yeah.
Sorry, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak 3 times. With that said, if you guys do decide to give administration direction to look into the options that Doug has recently brought up, could you also look into having administration bring back code for those people that will still be left outside of Cottonwood Street? Or, I think you mentioned Pacific Rim Parks, or all the other areas, because I know we're really honing in on Cottonwood Street and helping those people, but there's a lot more people that still want to develop. So I hope that that doesn't get kicked down the road, because I do know of one person in particular that is ready to start building tomorrow, or yesterday.
Thank you for that. Yeah, they are 2 kind of separate things, but we can discuss that later too. Yeah, Councilmember Fitch.
Well, yeah, I'd like to see that, like Councilmember Collins said, keep the well and septic option open. Well, let's incorporate that into it. Well, I mean, let's say we do get Cottonwood done next year. Still give them that option for well and septic in other areas that could be growing.
Okay. Okay, we're not giving any direction tonight, I mean, at this work session, it would be later, so we've got to keep this in mind. Rhonda, did you have a couple more? We've still got some time.
Yes, I just wanted to remind council, and maybe you've already said this, I'm sorry I was late, but before, that resolution was passed, was asked to not be passed by the landowners out there to the tune of $3.9 million. That's how much it all adds up to. That's a huge investment to spread out over 27 lot owners, and that's why they turned it down. So do you want to spend $3.9 million now, or do you just want to pay $900,000 and, do the assessment on the electrical? And then let it be incumbent on the landowner to decide if they want to put their own sewer and water in. And then when you do get the money and you want to feel like you can spend it and you have DRP funds without putting so much onus on the landowners out there, that's just a lot of money, $144,000 per lot, even spread out over 20 years, that's a lot, even if you cut that in half. So it just seems like, and if you do get out there and there's more lots to expand into, which I don't see that out there, fine, put it in and then require them to hook up then and let them take that risk. I don't think it should be so incumbent on the city of Seward to make sure you're preventing them from burning their house down, or they're not going to have insurance or this or that. I mean, what do the people do outside city limits? So this is not a new, we're not reinventing the wheel here as far as people on sewer and wells. So just keep that in mind. $3.9 million, that's a lot of money, and it's going to be more probably later. And to spread that out over that few lots is kind of tough. So,
Thank you. Council comments? Administration, you got anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate your,
And just for the public, on our agenda at the 7 o'clock meeting, within the agenda, there is a discussion item of this where we could give direction to administration. So it's not like we're just stopping right now. We just can't do anything in a work session, okay? So, I mean, anything by giving direction. Okay, are we ready to wrap this up? to make sure. Okay, I'll close the work session at 6:40 and remind everyone the regular meeting will start at 7 p.m.